Chris Chapman, I'm teaching at St Peters Lutheran College and I'm teaching history, and I have been teaching history for a while, but I've also taught English, geography, political studies and Christian studies. I went into teaching because I'd always loved history and I'd always loved geography. I love telling stories, I like acting, and history and geography were my favourite subjects at school, plus English, and I thought I'd like to be able to get out there and see if I can sort of help other people in those areas. So day-to-day activities is preparation, making sure your activity's okay, make sure you've got all your worksheets printed off, make sure your PowerPoint works, that all the technology is working for you. Sometimes you'll have activities that involve props or equipment, which you've got to make sure that you bring along. You have to make sure that you run through in your mind and visualise each activity so you can visualise exactly what you'll need and what might go wrong. You have to do a lot of research into, with history I try and provide a lot of anecdotal stuff, a lot of stories, a lot of background to what's going on. So you need to do a fair bit of broad research and reading for that to provide all those little interesting extra little bits that come in to make the lesson a little bit more lively. Day-to-day activities will also include following up students who may need extra help, chatting through results of exams or tests with students. I'll have marking to do, assessment, writing up reports, and then there's a lot of administrivia that comes into the occupation now. You have very detailed record keeping. If you've got students who have particular disabilities or learning problems, you have to document the time, the way you help them, the way they respond, any particular issues that may come up. You might have to contact ASDP teachers or parents. You might have to talk to colleagues about certain classes or certain activities to make sure that they don't clash with what they're doing or that they complement what they're doing. So it's a pretty varied sort of thing. The actual classroom teaching, which is the bit that everybody sees, that's obviously a big part of it too, but there's all that backup stuff and the extra record keeping, reporting, marking and so forth that has to come in. I came out with a 3-year diploma of teaching, which is what virtually everybody had like in the late 70s. I then upgraded myself to a Bachelor of Arts by studying externally. That took several years. There's a lot of on-the-job research and learning that you do. You're always reading, you're always researching, as I said, for extra information, broader information, to make things more interesting for the students. There's PD, there's a 20-hour per year PD requirement, professional development, which you're required to attend various workshops or go to seminars or go to things that upskill you, and it sort of help you to cope with new skills that you might need to acquire, particularly in the area of technology, or that talk about reporting or handling students with difficulties or things like that. So there's that kind of upskilling that goes on all the time. Since I did my Bachelor of Arts, I haven't gone back and done official extra study. But there's a lot of reading and a lot of research that goes on. And fortunately, I'm interested in the areas. I like history, geography, those sorts of things, so I'm happy to do that research. That kind of immersive, embodied, sort of sensitised learning is really, it's very effective, very vital, often hard to arrange, often time-taking to set up. But when you do it, if it's done well, thoroughly worth it, because students retain more. They find it easier to relate to the subject matter, and with history in my area, one of my main goals is to try and get them to empathise with the people of the time. But they're not just cardboard cutout people, they were just like us, their blood was red, the sky was blue, they're the same. And to try and get students to experience within their own bodies and with their own consciousness, like some of the things that those people experienced. You can achieve a certain degree with that by dramatically storytelling in class. You can act parts out, you can get them to think about what you'd feel like, you can put accents on, you can describe things to them in great detail, and that's highly effective, and I try and do a lot of that. But to actually get people like doing hands-on stuff, hands-on activities where they might eat the food that people ate, or they wear the clothes that people wore, or they physically do some of the activities that people did, that produces a much richer learning experience. And it enables them to retain and to understand more. So with my grade 10s, I take them down, when we do the World War II unit, I take them down to the rainforest. We go through a Kokoda jungle warfare World War II scenario, where they're rolling around the jungle floor and crawling up and down gullies and dodging sniper attacks and eating bully beef. And you know, if we did that in class and we wrote all those things up on the board and ticked them all off, when that student did the test, they would probably get all those answers right, and they go, oh yes, you know, the leaves were uncomfortable and so forth and so on. But if they've done it and they've been wet and muddy down in the rainforest and they've smelt what it smells like and they've eaten the food and they've tried sitting behind a log for a while and getting itchy and uncomfortable, when they're writing those answers, there's a much deeper understanding. I think it's really important to be able to read people's responses, to pick up a vibe from a class when that class is getting tired, or when the class is getting bored, or when the class has picked up and run with something and you really need to do a little bit more of that because they're obviously on key. There's a distinct vibe that you pick up. There's a sort of a psychic vibe kind of thing that you pick up from a class or from individuals. And it's really important to develop the ability to read that and to respond to your audience, I suppose, sort of thing, because that gives you a clue of where students are. And with that, you pick up lots of little non-verbal cues, like when a student is upset or when a student doesn't understand something, or when they'd like to ask a question but they're too scared to put their hand up, things like that. They're soft skills. To be able to, I suppose, organise and visualise an activity before you do it is a really important one, to actually sort of like tick it off and sort of sit back and zone out and visualise yourself doing it, and then suddenly think, oh, that's right, the PowerPoint's in the opposite side of the room, isn't it? I'd have to sort of swap that round, so the kids will have to sit over there. And if you don't like actually visualise that, then it happens in the middle of the thing and you've got the whole class in the wrong place. So yeah, to be able to organise and visualise, to pick up vibes from individuals and from groups as to how you're relating to them and they're relating to what you're doing or saying or what the activity is. They're really important skills that I'd say. And also I think just to develop a love of seeing other people happy in their situation. As a teacher, like a lot of the stuff that you teach the students, they will forget. In 5 years' time, they won't remember this specific lesson, but they will remember how they felt while they were in your class. They'll have a general impression of what the information was. They may have lost some of the detail, but if they can remember that it was interesting, that they felt happy and secure in your class, and you need to develop a desire to see people like that and to want to organise the activities and your approach to them in a way that will make them feel like that. And you won't always succeed, and I don't always succeed, but it's an important part of that overall arch of being a teacher. And to get on with people, a broad range of people, watch how your teachers and your lecturers work. I teach the way I wish I'd been taught. So I do a lot of things which teachers that I really liked did, and I try and avoid doing things which teachers and subjects that I didn't like did. So watch the teachers that you like, that you like the way they are teaching. Try and incorporate things that they do into what you're doing, and also out of teaching, out of school, and out of uni. Watch the way people who are good at relating to people relate. See what they do and how they react and how they respond to people in different situations. Pick up cues from them. If you think you might want to teach in a particular subject area, start doing some broad reading about it now. Research, broaden your knowledge. One thing I often tell history students is to read good quality historical novels. That's a really good way about learning about the human aspect of teaching, which you need to bring into your teaching. But also, if you're teaching geography, there's a whole stack of stuff that you can do where you actually, go to places, read about places that you may be going to teach about, read about the people who live there, the sorts of things that they're facing. Broaden your knowledge on things like that, and watch how people who are in teaching positions relate and the things that they do. The aspect of the role that I probably enjoy most is when I have a lesson which is interesting, entertaining, detailed and active, where I know students usually respond well to it. It's something that they usually find is interesting or fascinating or funny, or has a number of aha moments in it, where you can see students going, oh yeah, I see how that would work. Where you've set up a scenario, you've said, like, there's this, and there's this, and there's this. Now, what do you think is going to happen with this? Oh, yeah, it would be this, wouldn't it, sir? Yeah, that's exactly it. And you can see them pick it up. Those are the sorts of lessons that I really enjoy doing, and I try and do them for every lesson, but obviously you don't succeed all the time. Marking, assessment. Yeah, that's the bane of all teachers. It really is. It's stressful. It's often tedious. It's tiring. It takes ages. You sort of keep bringing up other jobs that you can do to try and get out of marking. Teachers often say their houses are never tidier or better vacuumed than just before marking, because you've got all this marking to do and you think, oh, I should vacuum the kitchen first, or I should mow the lawn first, because you just don't want to do it. It's so stressful. It's difficult too, because it's a very, very complicated process. There's a lot of lateral thinking involved. You've got to keep all these different criteria in mind at once. It's very tiring. And you get the awful scenario of a really nice kid who's really tried hard and they just haven't hit it. And you have to, sort of give them a D or something, and you think, oh, it's a good kid. They really tried hard. They just didn't get it, didn't get on. And that's always difficult. If you're in a difficult school, which St Peters isn't, and I'm very, very fortunate to have taught here for so long, because the kids are great, the parents are mostly really good. Discipline would be a real worry. In some schools, it's very, very difficult, and you're constantly tense. You never know which lessons are going to be destroyed or how. That would be very disheartening. And I take my hat off to teachers who teach for long periods of time in difficult schools. I couldn't do it. But yeah, for me at a school like this, that's not a huge hassle. And it's the marking and the administration and stuff is the problem. The role of technology, like I'm a bit of a dinosaur with technology myself, as my age will probably indicate. It has a role, it has an important role, but I think that we have to watch that it doesn't become technology dependent, that the human face of education always stays there. I think that the COVID epidemic, with all its awful horrors, might actually have done us a bit of a favour in that way, because before the COVID epidemic came through, I used to hear rumours and sort of rumours of rumours about teacherless classrooms and how whole schools are going to go online, and you'd need to be a monitor walking around. Now all the kids do everything online, and I think that in a lot of ways the COVID pandemic proved that people need people. Students need other students to associate with. They need to be in a classroom atmosphere. They need a teacher with a human face and a voice to relate to, and like even some of my most digitally wired students were just going mad with that endless online education where everyone's on Zoom and you couldn't come to school and you couldn't see anybody. And I think that that's something that it's taught us, that you can't just like be a completely AI sort of a thing. You need people in teaching, and that'll be a challenge, because there'll be a lot of commercial interest out there who will want to bring in as much technology as they possibly can, because they make money out of it. And I think that education institutions have to be very careful about how they maintain that human face of education, because I think, to me, it's very important. To try and produce aware citizens is a really big burden of the teacher. I often say to my grade 9s and 10s, look, you guys are going to be out there voting in 3 or 4 years. You'll be voting citizens in a sovereign, independent nation, and you'll be casting a vote for the government of that nation. You need to know what's going on outside Indooroopilly shopping town and off Nova 106. Right? And to do that, you just got to go to school, and whether you like this stuff or not, you need to know this information. You need to have these skills. You need to be able to discern and to think clearly, because you are the ones in whose hands the future of the environment, the world, the country, politics, everything is in your hands. Right? So I think it's a really big difference maker that teachers provide the information, provide the skills, provide the learning and the experiences generally that produce citizens that are aware, that are not just sort of selfish people who want what they want now because it seems to be the nicest, most comfortable thing. They can see long term. They understand what's going on in the world. They understand a bit about the systems, other people, other places, other times. They know a bit about that stuff, and they are what I would just call cluey people. It doesn't necessarily mean they've been to university and got degrees, but they just understand the system of life and what's happening around them. And whether you're teaching maths or science or history or English or drama or whatever it is, you're giving students an aspect of that learning, that breadth that will enable them to get out there and be aware citizens who know what they're doing and can make a positive contribution to the society that they'll be part of. really, really hard scenario, and one which I thank heavens haven't had to face a lot of. There's a number of things. You can try and use humour. You can try and you never ever try and outcool the kids. They'll always know more about computers than you. They'll always have more slick language than you. They'll always know what the latest slang and jargon is. Never try and outcool them like that. You can use a lot of humour with them, and I try and do that. Cook for them. If you've got a class and who you may not be getting on well with, if they can handle it safely, of course, bring them in, have your fry pan and the ingredients for pancakes and some jam and cream and a couple of bottles of chocolate milk with paper cups, and say, okay, you've got a worksheet lesson, this is Mr. Chapman's restaurant, you're going to have pancakes with jam and cream while you do your worksheet. All right, there's your worksheet on the desk. It's finished off for homework. Make sure you get it done. Keep your talk down level low. I'll be cooking the pancakes out here. Here's your chocolate milk. Don't spill it, etc. And that's something which kids really do appreciate. If you've taken the trouble to actually make something for them, or if you don't want to cook it in class, bring along fruitcake or biscuits or something like that you've cooked. They really do like that. I know a maths teacher here who does sausage sizzles sometimes. The kids really appreciate that. And they think it's fun, it's a good way of just sort of socialising. You can have a class that's a little bit less structured, but they're still doing their worksheet, they're not just mucking around doing nothing. That will be one way of doing it. Always make sure that whatever you do or whatever you say with classes or individual students, make sure that you will be very, very happy to have that class or that student remember that in 15 years' time when you run into them again. Because they will. You'll run into them and they'll remember stuff. And it's good to have someone say, oh, I remember we did so-and-so, or I remember we did whatever. Or you get an email from someone saying, I really appreciate it, I left 5 years ago, I really appreciated it when you did this, I was having a bad day, etc., etc. I have never had yet, and I hope I never do, a student come back and say, remember when you said so-and-so to me in class, that really hurt, like I was a kid then, and it wouldn't hurt me now, but gee, it knocked me around. I'd hate that to happen. And I mean, you're human and you make failures. Probably, you've probably done something wrong at some stage like that. But for a young teacher, I would say make sure that there's this long term. You're going to run into students again. They'll be adults. My chiropractor's an ex-student. All right, he gets back at me by, remember the detention you gave me? Like that. He gets back at me. Right. I run into students, ex-students in all sorts of situations. The night my father passed away in hospital and I was sitting with him, the nurse who came on at 11 o'clock for the shift was an ex-student. See, so like there's places where you'll run into these people all over the place. Make sure that whatever you're doing or saying with them is something that they will remember happily and say, that was really helpful when you did it, or remember the class, wasn't that fun? And that'll be a really big thing for a starting teacher, I think, to remember that. I wish someone had said that to me when I was starting out, because it's an important point. It's a nice feeling. I really enjoy being Mr. Chapman at St Peters, and I've been terribly blessed and very fortunate to have a teaching career where I can be in a school like this, in an environment like this. I've been able to enjoy my teaching. School's been one of my happy places. I'll miss it because of that. It's fun too. It's good fun seeing students come back, seeing how they've grown, seeing what they're doing now, seeing how they've changed. You see students who used to be really quiet, they were reticent, they weren't very confident. You're having to really sort of, bring them along and encourage them a lot, and they're out there now and they're powering ahead and they're confident adults. They've got their trade or their profession or business or whatever, they're doing things. Yeah, that's a really nice thing to see. And work hard, aim high, and you'll often be surprised at what you can achieve. There will be some things that you won't ever be any good at. There'll be some things that you think you aren't good at that you will get good at. There are some things that you know you're good at. And best of all, there are some things that you're going to be good at in the future which you don't realise you're good at yet. You're going to find out that you're actually rather good at it and you surprise yourself. So work hard, aim high, keep an open mind, have a go at everything, and you'll often be surprised at what you can find you're good at.